about this town when they won the Super Bowl?
Well, 15 years ago tonight, a lot of St. Louisans couldn't sleep because we were getting ready for the Super Bowl tomorrow on January 30th. And because we hadn't experienced home playoff games before, hadn't experienced quality football before, this town was more galvanized and more jazzed than I had ever seen it, even for any of the Cardinal World Series. I thought what happened was really special. It really did bring our town together, and I think that's one of the things that sports does. I was down in Atlanta. I was working. It was amazing how many people from St. Louis made their way down to Atlanta and partied and spent money there. The amount of money spent on the team during those 3 years was sensational. But I'll tell you what, 15 years ago tonight, I don't think I did sleep.
Well, I'm going to go back a few years before that. After my career all around the United States, when I moved back to St. Louis for good, we still had the house in the Washington, D.C. area, but I was coming back to stay. I was not, going to go back. I was crossing the Poplar Street Bridge when they were having the press conference announcing that the Rams were indeed officially going to come to St. Louis.
1994.
I thought that was, I said, like, man, the football team and Alvin are coming back to St. Louis on the same day. I thought that was really cool. I was in Atlanta, too, and one of the things I remember about that were how few of us were actually there. The number of people that were in the building, and then you start talking about media members and how many fans, there were only like 10 to 15,000 St. Louisans that were actually there at the Super Bowl. And I always look back and I said, like, the one thing that we didn't get to experience was what was happening that Saturday night and that Sunday in St. Louis. And it was really something special. Just at that time I did have a cell phone. As big as my head probably, but there people calling and saying, like, what's it like down there? What's it like? And you're saying, like, well, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and it was just a fantastic weekend. It was a fantastic week down there, and it was really, truly special. And it's hard to imagine that this franchise leaving this city based upon what went on that week, and really 2 weeks later, and 2 years later, in New Orleans.
Well, and germane to what we're talking about, what was it like maybe 13 years before that, if I'm doing the math correctly, when the football Cardinals left town?
That was interesting, and Bill Bidwell is still reviled here, and
the owner of the
of the football Cardinals, and Bill Bidwell just didn't fit in with the leadership of the town at that time, with the guys from Civic Progress. He wanted a new stadium, actually where the Dome is, and they were dead set against it. Gene McNary offered a stadium out in the county. Civic Progress said, well, we aren't going to participate. We aren't going to buy luxury suites or club seats in a stadium in the county. So they made sure that if there was an offer forthcoming, it was going to be in the city, and it never really wound up being a strong offer. He had no choice, because in that NFL, he couldn't have been able to exist. Now, it took him a long time to get a stadium, as it turned out, in Arizona, but that was strictly an economic and business move. He could not have existed as an NFL franchise here.
Sounds similar to what we're hearing today.
Well, the difference today is that you've got a guy with $5.6 billion, and you've got a league where with TV money, you don't need to sell a ticket to make money. You can exist without having a person in your stands. And you can make a lot of money because of the TV and NFL merchandising deals. This is a personal enrichment situation for Stan Kroenke. We call it a business deal. Well, it's his business. It's not the ability to have a football team that's successful. If he had the Dome, they pay $250,000 a year rent in the Dome. They pay $25,000 a game per Sunday or Saturday for preseason games for the Dome. They could succeed, but they don't make enough money for him, and the value of the franchise isn't great enough. He'll enrich himself to the tune of just moving to LA, $1.5 billion. The franchise value will go from roughly $1.93 billion to $2.5 million the day it moves.
Right. And he's one of the few franchises that is less than $1 billion. He's one of the few franchises that like I say, the amount of money that you make is in the bottom, not in the bottom third, it's like one of the last two. That changes. If we could lift our house up, our house and our land, and move it to California, obviously it would be worth a lot more money. Same thing you said is personal enrichment. And it's hard to deny the fact that, what are you supposed to do?
Right.
We can make you stay here, says the league, maybe, but if you don't want to be here and you don't have a lease and you don't have really any, other than the league rules, not any legal authority to keep you here, it's going to be tough to keep him here.
Casey, I want to make one point here, because we do talk about his personal enrichment. But from a league standpoint, obviously, they've said that the Dome isn't adequate now. 20 years into our Dome, 25 years into the existence of the Dome, we've got to move. It's got to be a different building for the NFL to accept it. And that means a larger footprint. That means the ability to make more money for the team within that building.
So why do you think we should try to keep the Rams? And if so, why should we? Or is it too late?
Well, I don't think that the object of the game should not be to keep the Rams, because ultimately I don't think we're going to keep the Rams. Do we keep this place as an NFL franchise? I think that's possible. And that's why a new stadium, I guess, has to be built, because the league has said as much. One of the things
So build a stadium regardless if we know who the team is going to be?
Yes, I could see going in that direction. How it's financed and all those things have to be basically worked out. I do say this too, and I know that I'm kind of in the minority of this, just like I was when I was saying 3 years ago, even more than that this day could be possibly coming. A lot of people said I was crazy and all that, and said, well, fine, but I could kind of see this coming down the pike. But who said the stadium has to be in the city? Now, the edict may be that it has to be in a blighted area. West County Mall at one time was considered blighted, and it is now doing much, much better. So, but I'm not one that buys in that it has to be in the city of St. Louis. So, yes, I think it is one that you proceed with a stadium plan. Don't lock yourself on to, near North Side down by the river. Just try to make it work where it can work. And I think that is something that the region should pursue.
One thing we learned with the departure of the football Cardinals is it costs a whole lot more to get another team than to keep the team that you have. So the pursuit should be to keep the Rams, to try to abide by the NFL's bylaws and try to get them to abide by their own bylaws to keep the Rams here. And if that doesn't work, if Stan Kroenke and the league are dead set on his stadium in California, then you have no choice. But if you want another team, then to pursue another team. But there are so many ancillary things. We talked about how great the city was and how excited it was 15 years ago. The Rams were named the Philanthropic Organization of the Year in St. Louis in 2010. Anheuser-Busch was still a headquarter here. Of all the businesses in St. Louis, the Rams, according to the people that made that decision, did more in our community from a charitable standpoint. It's unbelievable, really, to look at the Rams, go to the Rams website, stlouisrams.com, look at what they do in the community. Those are things that you can't get if you don't have an NFL team. The benefit that an NFL team brings, even if it's not that great, are things that you just can't get elsewhere.
And I've said that on an earlier show that, we have experts come in, it really doesn't do anything financially for you and all that. So I think it's really intangible, and I don't think it can be measured economically, the economic impact that an NFL franchise had. It does pay off in dollars. It's hard to ascertain what those dollars are, but I guarantee you it does have a financial impact on the positive.
Okay.